What is going on, Canucks fans? We're back with episode 3 of Blackfish, and I just got to get out in front of something. I'm going to get a new mic because I know I got the nose jets last time, and we got a lot of people commenting they didn't like it, and trust me, I get it. You don't want to hear that all the time, so I'll do my best. But yeah, if my voice isn't great right now, just got back from my stag, went to Vegas with the boys over the weekend. Um, so you know,
Incredible.
feeling good. It was fun. It was fun and everything, but time to lock back in here. And I will say it was probably the worst time to go away, because we missed a huge announcement. Patrick Alvin was fired as the GM of the Vancouver Canucks. And then we had a Jim Rutherford interview drop. And I mean, that is always gold.
News
But
for
Dave,
days.
I just want to ask you, because we know Patrick Alvin was really involved in the scouting. He was out in Sweden a couple times. He was in Ontario watching Chase Reed and a couple of the OHL prospects. So, do you think that that was kind of a mistake letting him go now? Like, was it too soon, or what do you think?
Well, I think the good thing is that you did set him out for all these assignments. Like, thanks for all your reports. See ya.
Mhm.
Obviously they did offer him a lower position, which is all fine and dandy. But at this point, I think we're almost in May here. I think at this point, their list is likely set. There've probably been some really nice conversations already. So at in the grand scheme of things, I think the scouting staff can probably handle it from here. That being said, you don't have anyone manning. You don't have anyone at the helm right now.
Mhm.
It is a little crazy. It's a little bit of a bit. I don't know if I want to use the word short sighted, but it is a little bit of a wild scenario. We're talking about the biggest draft in the history of the franchise, potentially, if not one of them, definitely. And your GM or your GMless, your all your scouts need to be contracted up. It's just it's a really weird time at the most crucial time. So at the end of the day, it might not be the end of the world because he did do all his scouting, which is great. So the conversations have been had. It's just the timing is a little suspect.
Yeah, it's tough. I was a big fan of. I don't know if I would say fan, but I thought there needed to be repercussions for a season like this, and um, you're right. If it was Elvine that just went out there and no scouting staff, like that's fine. They would have the conversation, so they at least have the scouting report from Elvine. Whether he takes that lower position within the organization, I kind of doubt it. Um, it's kind of a bad taste in your mouth. You don't really want to go back to the place that just let you go, right?
Yeah.
Um,
But and I will say, it is going to be an interest. Hopefully, they have this figured out somewhat soon because at the end of the day, although the scouts, the scouting team, Todd Harvey, they're going to be the one that give all the information and essentially make those picks. It does have to get the a-okay by the GM, and so those visions have to align. And like I said, it is a little suspect that we're two months from the running, and who knows? I guess that's what they better choose the right person. Let's just say that because at this point the visions have to align. There's no wiggle room for them not to.
mhm.
So I don't know. It's just cutting it to real crunch time here.
Yeah, and whoever they bring in, they obviously have done their scouting reports all around the world, so they'll have their own opinion, and I bet you they'll hire whoever best aligns with the list that they have right now. But we'll
For
go
better or
over to
for
our
worse.
first segment here, prospect roundup. This list is getting shorter and shorter, Dave. We have Braden Coots and Gabe Sherratt. They made easy work of their second round matchups. They'll be going on to their respective conference finals. Um, Braden Coots, I believe he had 3 goals, 2 assists, a couple big games there. What did you see in his game, kind of as the playoffs has gone on?
Yeah, well, Saskatoon was a great story in round one, upset Edmonton Oil Kings in 7, but you knew going against that powerhouse Prince Albert team, it wasn't going to be close, and it wasn't. Even if the Blades made it close, the shots were just outrageously favoring the Prince Albert Raiders. So Coots scored 3 goals, and all three beauties, or at least two of them were absolute beauties. His second goal, which happened to be his second of the game in game three, I believe it was just a beautiful cut in and just went top corner. Like he just continues to show every single week, every single game that he's a gamer. He's bringing in the playoffs. He's the kind of guy you want him to be in the playoffs, winning faceoffs, running that forecheck, just creating stuff. all the time, everywhere. So, he's poised for a big run. He's going to have his work cut out for him up against the Ruck Twins and the Medicine Hat Tigers. But, my money's still on the Prince Albert Raiders. They have a really good team right now. And Braden Coots is definitely the go ahead guy for that.
Yeah, I remember a few weeks back, or maybe it was first episode, second episode. You talked that Braden Coots was playing on the third line, I believe. Has he moved up the lineup? I know he plays like first line deployment, but has he actually moved up the lineups? Is he playing with better players?
No, it's still the same. They're running the same thing. He's on paper, quote unquote, third line center, but he's really not a third line center. He's playing everything. He's their go-to face-off guy. Like he is. I think for them, I think it's just more of a line matchup sort of thing. Like they have him on third line on paper just because they have to have them on there, but they roll their lines pretty smoothly, and he's getting tons of minutes. So don't need to worry about that one bit.
Yeah, and you mentioned he's gonna have a tough matchup against the Ruck Twins coming up. Gabe Sherratt kind of handled the tough matchup that he had in round two against the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds. But he beat Chase Reed, I believe,
Yep.
4-1. Picked up 3 assists. How did he look?
Yeah, he's good. I mean, with Gabe Sherratt, it's always kind of the same thing. He's not the guy that we're gonna like a Braden Coots that we're gonna show a bunch of awesome clips with. He does all the dirty stuff that I love to see, but isn't the most quote unquote sexy type of plays. So he's just a meat grinder out there, third line guy. Picks up assists just from hard work, and so he has a nice shot. He can score goals from time to time, but just a third line guy. And I was a little bit surprised. Kitchener is a powerhouse, but the Sioux Greyhounds, they're a pretty good, formidable team. So, was a little bit shocked it wasn't a bit more of a series, but overall, Kitchener was definitely the better team, and so they move on to the Windsor Spitfires against Ethan Belchez. So we'll see how that goes for the next round.
And it wasn't all good news for Canucks prospects as Parker Alkos went up against a juggernaut in the Everett Silvertips and landed DuPont. Um, I believe he finished as a -1 rating. He picked up an assist, which is good. That's a tough team, and he's not necessarily the offensive defenseman that you think. So, any kind of views on him?
Yeah, he was playing big minutes. He actually even squeezed up onto that top power play unit for a bit, and he plays well. I mean, at the end of the day, kind of like Gabe Sherrod, nothing fancy with him. He's just a really smart, smooth, you know, puck mover from the back end. He's a big boy. He doesn't really play super physical. That's one thing I would love for him to do. He's committing to Quinnipiac next year, and I'd love for him to gain a little bit of muscle. That was one thing right from the get go. I remember seeing him right out of that first development camp, very slender, really tall, but he needs to fill out that frame. I think that work is still needed to be done. But overall, it was a good series. Kelowna, they were down 3-0. They ended up making it a series. They lost 4-1, but they almost made it 3-2. Like it was a close one. So at the end of the day, Everett is just like I said, Prince Albert was stacked. Everett is just a powerhouse. So I it's going to be a good run for them. I'm super intrigued to see if Prince Albert makes it through, because if that's the case, it should make a Landon Dupont versus Braden Coots final here. So
Yeah, that'll be exciting to see. And I will say it won't be the last time that we see Alcos because he's going to be going as the host city to the Memorial Cup in a month's time.
yeah,
Um, our next segment is just a Vancouver Abbey update. This will probably be our last one of the season because both their seasons are wrapped up. Unfortunately, as I already mentioned, I was gone, was not able to watch the final Vancouver Canucks game, but I did see Ty Mueller score a pretty sweet goal.
that's
Anything
a
from
win.
Abbotsford you want to get
Yeah,
off your chest?
the Ty Mueller goal is a win for both of us. I know that we're both pretty big on Ty Mueller, just not from like a superstar standpoint, but just from a soldier down in Abbotsford that I think just
Mhm.
deserved his time. So congratulations to him. That's just an awesome, awesome accomplishment. So it was a pretty goal too. So
Yeah.
in terms of Abbotsford, we've said this every single week, but right now it wasn't really about the wins. The season was lost months
Mhm.
ago. So now it's just about those small developmental wins. And, they finished the season on a 4-game winning streak. That's not nothing, to scoff at. Not only that, they picked up another shutout. So at one point they were rocking back-to-back shutouts, with Ty Young being one of those guys. So, it's a strong start. For if it matters or not, it got them out of the basement of the Pacific Division. So they finished ahead of the Calgary Wranglers. So suck on that, I guess. And and they finished 29th in the AHL standing. So again, nothing to write home about, but at least a decent finish. It was nice. One thing that I really took out of it was Ty Young picked up the win, let in 2 goals. So now he's only letting 2 goals over his last 2 games. Had a really, really, really disappointing start to the season. One that awarded him some time down in Kalamazoo, and it really seemed like that time in Kalamazoo kind of switched something because once he came back, although he wasn't winning every game, he looked like a much different and a much improved prospect, which isn't something that it isn't all that unfamiliar. Like I have heard that Kalamazoo is the one area where Ian Clark's name pops up. Like he does go down there and actually works with them. So I don't think it's a shock that prospects go down to Kalamazoo and come back a little bit more tuned up. And for all intents and purposes, Ty Young came back and he looked good. So it was a nice finish for him. Stats were never going to be good considering what he was at the starting of the season, but overall, I thought he looked good. Danilo Klimovich ties Linus Karlsson for the franchise leading goals, 70 goals. So, good for him. We've been talking about that for a couple weeks now. It took him a little longer than I expected to get there, considering he was only a couple down a few games ago. But, he's going to be an interesting topic. He's been pretty much the most polarizing prospect in the Vancouver Canucks system for years now. He's been in Abbotsford for 5 years, I believe it is. Like he does tie Linus Karlsson, but he's played so many more games. He's played a lot of games for Abbotsford and he's on an expiring contract. I know a lot of people, at least in my mentions, I still have a lot of people that, I guess I'll say believe in Danilo Klimovich, and we're hoping to see him at the NHL level. And I just don't know if there was any ever in the cards for this player. But it was the last regime that drafted him. I just don't know if there was much belief in him. And with that said, I just don't know if he's going to be a part of this team going forward. Could be wrong. Anything can happen, but on an expiring contract, I would imagine he probably packs his stuff and moves on to another team and hopefully does get his chance to kind of blossom at some point.
Yeah, we talked about the traits, having an NHL trait, and that's what's gonna get you to the next level, and then hopefully you find everything after that. I mean, he's got the NHL shot. Like he's
Got
definitely got that trait in his bag, and unfortunately, it probably just isn't a fit here. Isn't gonna work out in Vancouver. Hopefully, he can go elsewhere this summer, find a new home, and hopefully, crack that NHL lineup.
Yep.
Um, anybody else? Riley Patterson. I know we talked about him briefly. How did he look in
Yeah,
the
he
final?
looked good. The slow and steady. No points over the weekend, so he finishes with a goal and an assist in 4 games, which is fine. He was still on that top unit power play, top six center behind Ty Mueller this weekend. So yeah, you'd like a little more points, but for me, it was just more about the process, and I do think he looked a lot more pro ready than he did in that very first period that he played 2 weeks ago. So baby steps. Now he goes into the offseason and just takes that with him, and hopefully has a good camp and shows up as a top six player for Abbotsford next year.
Yeah, it's good that he had that taste. He
Yeah.
had that 4 game stretch or whatever it was, and he'll know what the game's like over here, what the pro game is. Then hopefully he can turn in like a really really good season. And I don't know. We know that Vancouver isn't probably going to be in a competitive window next year, so maybe he's the one that gets a cup of coffee at the end of next year. Um, I think it's time,
Totally.
Dave. Last week we talked about Gavin McKenna versus Ibar Stenberg, and that was a great conversation. I thought we really broke it down really, really well. But now we got to transition over to the defensemen because after those two wingers, it is pretty much a gap of four. Uh, a pool of four guys that you could necessarily see going in that next little area. So
Roll the lottery bull and just pick out a ball, and that's the name you got. It's
yeah, I mean, it seems like they're all separated by a little bit of a hair. I know you're kind of leaning more Chase Reed as the leader of the clubhouse there, but I do want to say Canucks and all the fans are always like, "Oh, Canucks are never going to win a lottery, never going to win a lottery," and can't blame them. I mean, they never have. So, it is their most likely odds,
Riscard.
55.7% that they pick third overall. So, if that happens, they'll have this crop of defensemen to choose from. So I think it's time we should get into it, Dave. And I won't waste any more time. I'll let you talk about Chase Reed. He's a 6'2", 187-pound right shot defenseman. He's an offensive guy. He put up 18 goals, 48 points in 45 games And then he added 6 points in 10 playoff games before he was eliminated. What do you see, and what makes you think he's the top of this defenseman class?
Well, I think with a player like Chase Reed, especially if you're talking second or third overall, like you for me, you really need to be confident that that player can really truly hit that mark of being like a difference maker. I do think all the players we'll talk about today do have that ability, but I just think for a guy like Chase Reed, I do think there's just that added extra layer of just a chance to become, I don't know if I want to say superstar, but bona fide number one. Like, maybe an Adam Fox kind of style where, he's not a Quinn Hughes number one, he's not a Cale Makar number one, but he's a number one defenseman on a team. You know, I just think for one, the boots are the big thing. Again, if you're gonna draft at third overall, second overall, I just feel like you want them to be able to move. And Chase Reed, out of all these guys, he's the mover. He's like laterally, backwards, forwards, all four ways. He's good to go. And I just think he's got that innate ability to just be explosive and dynamic from the back end, which is something, he's going to run a top power play. He's just going to be your go-to guy. Like a guy that the Canucks want in a Zeev Buium is what Chase Reed can be. Will he be? Who knows? But I think if you're going to make that bet, he is the one out of the four that just does have that booming upside. Just because of his dynamicism, he's like his first step out of the zone is just so impressive, and once he gets going, he's hard to stop because he just sees those lanes and he maneuvers in. He's a one man entry, and one thing I love about him is that he's not afraid to chip it in himself. Like he'll carry it in from behind his own zone, chip it in the zone, and then go rush and go get it on the forecheck. Like he's nasty. No, he's not delivering booming hits, and there's a little bit of shoring up to do on the defensive end, but he's a nasty player out there. He's got some grit to his game, and I just think overall, he's still 6'2". He's got room to grow. I just think there's just too much there to pass up on if you're talking this high in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, you just sold me right there. I mean, that he does sound like one of the best defensemen in the class. Offensive side of the game is his specialty. And my question for you though is, you mentioned that the Canucks want Zeev Buium to be like this. So, do you not think if they took a Chase Reed at 3, that it would kind of be limiting Zeev Buium's potential? Do you think they can kind of mesh together on the same team if they are pretty much the same player type?
Yes and no. I mean, but at the end of the day, like we're talking second or third overall pick. Like I think you just take best player available and just hope they both hit. And then you got a problem that you love to have. You got one guy on the left side, one guy on the right side that are fight jockeying for that top position. If you need to trade him down the road, I guess, we talk about that later. But I just think, you got a yin for yang and Zeev and Chase Reed, and then you got Tom Vilander in there, and then you got, some other guys, some lower level guys like Elias Pettersson, and, I guess even Kirill. But, like think about a world where you got Zeev and Tom Vilander on the top pairing, and then you got, or, second, I don't know, you got Chase Reed at running your second pairing. So I don't know. I just think it's a good problem to have. And I don't think you don't take a Chase Reed because you have a Zeev Buium. I think you just take best player available, which in my eyes, maybe they see it different, but in my eyes is a Chase Reed. And you just hope that you can develop into that player that you're hoping that you're getting out of both him and Zeev Buium. And then, like you said, if you have that problem where you got, oh no, you've got a budding superstar defenseman, right hand shot, like I don't know, you figure it out in the end. But like he does have some stuff in the defensive end that is going to have to be coached, but that, to be honest, I think there's a little bit of give and take with pretty much every single player, not only in among this defensive corps, but this entire draft. Like I think there's always a negative to pretty much every player there is in this draft. So I think you take some of that, and to be honest, a lot of his poor defensive metrics come from him just being a bit of a rush guy. A lot of his defense is kind of rush because he's always trying to come back because he's always pushing for that offense. So if he can rein that in a little bit, which I think would come with some pro coaching, I just think the upside is just too high.
Mhm. So I just thought of this while you were chatting there, and I know you don't like player comparables. I'm not going to ask you to do that, but I would like, and I want you some time to think about this. We'll do it at the end.
Okay.
Ceiling for each defenseman and floor for each defenseman. How's that? You don't have to go
Okay.
yet. I'll give you some time to think about it, but
Yeah.
um, just thought I'd plant it in your brain right now before we go over to Keaton Verhoff. And Verhoff was one of the defensemen. Like, he was butting with Gavin McKenna coming into the year about who would go first overall. Like, do you
Yep.
want the big right shot defenseman, or do you want, probably the best offensive skill in the class in McKenna? So, I mean, he did the same thing as McKenna did. They both went NCAA route after leaving the CHL, and you know it was a tough start for McKenna. It was also kind of a tough start for Verhoff, but it kind of went downhill
Mhm.
as the season went on. Like, it slowly started declining even more than it already was. But think about it. He's a 17-year-old defenseman playing in the NCAA, like playing against some 24, 25-year-olds, right? Like, the level of competition just went up that extra step, and the physicality went up as well. So he still did pretty decent. 6 goals, 20 points, 36 games. Like I mentioned, he's a 6'4", 200-pound right shot defenseman. So Dave, where do you think it kind of went wrong this season for Verhoff?
Yeah, and you are absolutely right. You nailed it. I think it is very important that we do preface that, he is a 17-year-old. He bet and challenged himself. He could have just as easily stayed in Victoria, which as an Islander, I would have loved. I was stoked when we had a Cole Reshny and Keaton Verhoff over here and finally get some superstars. But I digress. He could have easily stayed in the WHL and just lit it up, and there wouldn't have been much question. But there is two limiting, but definitely one limiting factor in his game that I think was still evident in his game last year and would have been evident in his game, and that's just his decision making. I just throughout the season, you're right. Like his season did come with some struggles at the starting, but I just unlike Gavin McKenna, where he just kind of elevated as the season went on. I just feel like Keaton Verhoff just never his game never rose to the occasion as the games got bigger. I mean, they made it all the way to the Frozen final, Frozen Four, and his game just didn't really get much better. And that's not to say it was bad. He still played great. He was, averaging around 18 minutes, still playing a ton of game as a 17-year-old. So it's all impressive. But for me, there's just a lot of questionable decision making that goes on, like all over the ice, specifically in the defensive zone. It just you almost get the sense that as soon as there's a little bit of pressure put on him in his own end, he starts to kind of panic. Unlike a guy like Chase Reed or some of the other guys we're going to talk about today, where they take their time and try to look for the best possible outlet. With Keaton Verhoff, it almost just seems like as soon as there's pressure, he gets a little flustered, and it's all about just getting that puck gone. Whether it's over the glass, whether it's down the ice for an icing, whatever it is, just get rid of that puck. He doesn't want the smoke. And so for me, especially for a guy who's 6'4", I would just like to see just a little bit more composure in his game. So for me, that's one big glaring thing. Like I know the skating is brought up, and that is an area that does need some shoring. But I do think skating could be worked on, and his overall mechanics are fine. I think that is something that could get better. But his decision making is something that's going to have to get shored up, because it's only going to get tighter. It's only going to get quicker as he progresses. So he's only 17. Obviously, he's got all the time in the world for that to happen. Just as of today, I just don't know if it's good enough. Again, we're talking about a second to third overall pick if you're picking him. So I just don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze in terms of him versus Reed. And then there's the skating. Straight line, he's fine. He can pick up just like Chase Reed. He can pick up the speed. He's got surprisingly awesome hands. For a big lanky guy, got some fun hands. But his lateral movements are slow, and his back skating, that's what really burns him. Like there's a lot of clips at the NCAA where he's just getting burned on the back pivot, and so that's again, I think that's something that can be worked on. So I'm not as concerned. It is a concern, but the positives, he's 6'4" right shot. So people are going to bank on him regardless. Like he's going to be a top 5 pick, I would imagine, only because of that. And they're gonna say, hey, we can coach all the rest. It's all good. This is a unicorn that doesn't come around every day. A right shot guy. He's got a booming shot. Like he's gonna score goals. He's gonna be a power play guy. He's got really nice hands and tight. Can get his shot off with a really quick release. So like overall, he's going to be probably that 40 to 60, 40 to 50 point guy, I would say. And he's just going to be your big, steady right hand shot.
Yeah, you mentioned the back skating, and it's got to be important for a defenseman, no, to be able to learn how to back
I would
skate
think
or
so.
do it at an elite level, especially if you're going to get picked this high in the draft.
Yep.
We talked about the skating, how that's kind of an issue. His boots aren't aren't that elite level that you see in necessarily like a Chase Reed. His decision making isn't really good. But what's the good part about his game?
Yeah, yeah, I think he's just like he's a big body who wants to push the
But
offense.
what,
I guess
like, traits? What and I always mention NHL traits. Like, what's an NHL trait besides, like,
he's got a
being
big shot
tall?
and he's got size. Like he's got the size. Like he does lay out. He's not like a booming like he's not going to be your Scott Stevens big hit, but he's got a big frame and he does know how to use it. Like people do bounce off of him, so he's got a big frame. He's got one of the better shots out of all the defensemen in this class. Like he can rip it on a one timer. He can slap shot. He's got a really nice curl and drag, like one quick motion. Like he's got a really nice shot. And he's got surprisingly really nice hands. Like I've got an article up at CanucksArmy where you can see some of his moves. Like sometimes I think he tries a little too much, but when it does work, he's got some really sick hands. And I just think overall there's just a really nice package of just a steady right hand shot, whether it's a top pairing or a top four guy. I just think there's some nice qualities as just a safe projection type of player as a right hand shot.
Mhm. So, you said one thing earlier that is just in my head, and this is how I've been kind of going through this draft process, and I try to always remind myself of this, that, you know, what did we say at the beginning of the year? I already mentioned it, but it was Verhoff or McKenna.
Yes.
Why are I guess for me, why am I not dinging McKenna for going and testing himself, but I am for Verhoff? You know, like that doesn't really it's not fair, right? Like they play different positions, but just because he Verhoff didn't take the extra step that McKenna did, we shouldn't be punishing him for going to test himself, right? Because you mentioned that if Verhoff was stayed in the WHL, this wouldn't even be a conversation. So why now is it like, oh, well, Chase Reed stayed in the CHL. He didn't go test himself, but Verhoff did. And now it's just undeniably has to be Chase Reed over Verhoff. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't think it is undeniable. Like that's the thing. Like that's where your scouting staff comes in, and like it's really going to be about projection because I think today that's the negative to making that jump. Gavin McKenna did it. Keaton Verhoff did it. Tynan Lawrence did it. It worked for Gavin McKenna. He finished second in points per game. We talked about it all last week. He rose to the occasion. I don't think Keaton Verhoff's quote unquote been bad. I just don't think he's really. I don't think he's elevated his game any more than it was at the starting of the season. And so you typically it's a what have you done for me now? The draft's in 2 months. Unfortunately, that's the thing. Like, so now it really just comes down to what do you project him as? Do you think Chase Reed is going to hit that upside? Like, I think he will. Maybe you don't. Maybe he won't. I just think he's great today. That's where that's when your projection really comes in because you are right. Like, after all this negative stuff I've said, like, you are right. Like, you really have to take it with a grain of salt a little bit. You have to give him some slack. But you also have to, you just have to admit, call a spade. And the fact is that he didn't up his game like, what Gavin McKenna did. And so that was the risk he took. And, I don't think it's like worked out negatively for him. I just don't think it's done himself any favors by doing it. And I think the same with Tynan Lawrence.
Yeah, I would definitely agree on Tynan Lawrence, and we'll talk about him in a different episode, probably next week. But
Well, what do you think? What are you a big Keaton
of
Verhoff guy?
Verhoff, but that was what I'm saying. Like I don't know. Like I need to do a little bit more digging into it.
Yeah.
Um, but like you kind of heard from the start that his boots weren't elite, and that's what you need as a defenseman, especially if you're going this high.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I need to do more looking, but I just need to. I always want to take a step back and just be like, hey, like look at all the factors, all the contributing factors that could have led to this. The
Yeah.
such a big change, right?
Yeah.
But
And I
yeah, I
will
don't know.
say and I will say, sorry to cut you off, but I will say, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not gonna be upset if they take Keaton Verhoff over Chase Reed. Like, I can see the projection. That's why I'm not, I don't my argument isn't, like, all that powerful because, like, I do see the projection in his game. Like, I do see why you would take a Keaton Verhoff over a Chase Reed, right? I think you got a bit of a more solid floor than what you're banking on Chase Reed. So I'm not gonna be upset if it ends up being Keaton Verhoff. I just do think the upside swing is much higher with a Chase Reed and with a team like the Vancouver Canucks. I think if I think that's a bet you could be willing to take.
For sure. And like you just think about like other teams drafting like some of the guys that kind of come up in their draft year, right? Like Capo Caco, right?
Yep.
Or like the silly Pod Colson. And sure, those guys are NHL players, but like you look a little bit lower down the draft and it's like, oh yeah, this guy fell, but actually he's pretty damn good,
Yeah.
you know? And so like I just feel like recency bias can kind of come in a little bit too much
Totally.
sometimes. That
Yeah.
might like I could you not see I mean, we saw it today. Elite Prospects just dropped their their prospect rankings and they had Keaton Verhoff significantly lower than all these guys. And I'm just saying, like,
That one
I could
seems steep.
I could see, yeah, I could see someone taking a Verhoff at somewhere in the tens if this is true, and they're getting a steal, you know?
Oh, they're getting a steal. If you're
Yeah,
getting Keaton Verhoff at 11, 10, even 7, you're
yeah,
getting that's a steal. That's a job well done, and you're running up to the podium, taking him, laughing.
yeah. So I mean, yeah, he'll be the most fun to watch on draft days to see where he goes.
The
Uh,
boots are it though. Like I said, if you're drafting second overall and you want a defenseman, you don't want them to have you're fine with a little bit of,
they got to know how
question
to
mark.
skate backwards.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I think we spent enough time talking about Verhoff, but he is someone I'm very excited to watch down the
Yeah.
stretch here.
Totally.
Um, Albert Smits is our next one. 6'3", 205-pound left shot defenseman. Um, 6 goals, 13 points. With I don't know how to pronounce. It's a Liga, but you're correct, right?
Yeah, Eucharist. Yeah.
Okay, sweet, good enough for me.
Eucharist. Yeah, it's fine with me.
What I like most about Smits, like he just seems more NHL ready to me than any of the other defensemen we're going to talk about. And that's because like he not only played in the World Juniors, and a lot of these guys did as well, but he went and played for the Olympics. And I understand that Latvia isn't, you know, rich in defensemen, but he was still playing like big minutes over there against men. Like that is just very, very impressive to me. And that just screams that he'll be able to translate it if he's already doing it against men in two different leagues. So what are your thoughts on Smits?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the big thing is like, and you're right. Latvia isn't this, powerhouse, especially on D. But I think that even works to his argument. I think the fact that he actually looked good in the Olympics on a Latvian team that was bound to get blown out on occasion. I just think that speaks volumes to how well he is, and he's played amongst men for most of his season, and he's looked fine. Yeah, his offensive numbers aren't quite they're not booming and they probably won't ever be. He's probably not going to be a 50-point defenseman. But like you mentioned, I think the thing that what you're getting with Smits is just a plug and play defenseman. Like I've talked to some people that think that he could play in the NHL in September, like in preseason games, and then make the team in late September because I believe it starts in late September next year. But I've talked to quite a few people who believe that that's the case. He's just he's got good feet, big body. He's like for me, he's almost like I don't want to. And I'm not comparing me with the comparables, but I'm not comparing the player, but I just mean kind of like the type of role that he could be. It almost seems like a Jacob Truba kind of style, where he's not your like number one guy or maybe even number two guy, but he just seems like the most solid three in the history. He just seems really solid. Can lay out the body. He's got some grit in his game. So I just think with Smits, you're just kind of getting just a real polished, just NHL defenseman. Obviously, you're hoping they're all NHL defensemen, but I just feel like he's just a guy that you could just you're not stressing. You kind of know what the floor is and you know what the ceiling is. It's kind of just right in the middle of just you know second pair guy. He just seems like a second pair guy to me. So I think with Smits, and like I said, he skates well. We've talked so much about skating, but he skates well for such a big body too. So I really like his game. I know some people that are super high on him. I know some people that are a little softer on him. I'm kind of right in the middle. I don't know. The only thing about him is I don't know if I consider him a Vancouver Canucks target. I don't know if he's a player you take 2 or 3. But I think if he's sitting there at 5, I think he's a pretty. I think you got a good argument to take him at that spot. But I do think 2 or 3 might be a little high in my books. But I do think you're getting a good defenseman, obviously.
I like how you said, you know what the floor is, you know what the ceiling is. I did that backwards, but you know what I mean.
Yep.
I like that you said that because we're gonna ask you about it later. So, yeah, I am in the camp that like, Chase Reed probably needs a little bit more time developing. To same with Verhoff, same with the next guy we'll talk about. But if Smith is already doing it against men, I think he might have the easiest kind of pathway to playing in the NHL next season. And I would agree. I think the ceilings are higher on some of these other defensemen because the Canucks aren't going to pick lower than 3. So I don't think Smits is necessarily that target. One last thing about Smits. I know you said he's just solid. He's polished. But what would be like his best trait? What's that NHL trait that I'm looking for?
Um,
It
I
seems like he's kind of like a more of defensive defenseman if you
Yeah,
were
yeah, I like that
comparing
that's
him
why,
to
like, for me, I
Jacob
think it's
Trouba.
just, his mobility, like, and his size, like, combined with his
Mhm.
size. I think just his ability to just impact the game, especially at the defensive side, is just his trait. Like, I don't know if I can find, like, if I can think off the top of my head just, like, one single trait that really stands out, which is why he's not, like, a 3 for me. But he's just, like, a solid defenseman,
Mhm.
like, he's just solid.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Our last guy. We're only going to talk about 4 defensemen. There are a couple more that we can get into as the draft comes up here, but this is one of my favorites, and I got to watch him firsthand at the WHL Top Prospects game, and I was just so impressed with this guy.
Yeah.
Interviewed him after. He's a great dude to talk to as well. Carson Carls. Um, Prince George Cougar, 20 goals, 83 points, or 73 points, my apologies. And then he added a point per game, um, as well in the playoffs, even though they're now eliminated. But I mean, he's got it 6'2", 194 pounds. But when I watched him, I did not think he was going to be as physical as he was. He was throwing some bone crushing hits, and he was so fun to watch. He picked up, I think he was the captain for his team. He picked up 4 assists, and they only scored 4 goals. He was in on every single point, or every single goal, I should say, with some bone crushing hits. Like, I'm pretty sure he injured a guy. It was, yeah, he was just so clearly the best player on his team that I noticed for sure. And I was like, and that's the WHL's top prospects for this season.
Yeah.
I know there's obviously some that would be in this game, McKenna, Verhoff, um, but yeah, it was super impressive. So he's been higher on my board than most from what I remember seeing and everything. So what did you have? What what do you have to add that I already didn't say?
Yeah, no, it was great. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe in that top prospects game, his team was down and he got at least 3 or 4 of his points in the 3rd period, if
Yep.
not all of them, but it was at least 3. He basically just took over. I remember you were at the game and I was watching from home and we were kind of messaging like, "Oh, this guy, he's taken over the game." For both sides. So that's one thing you love to see. And I will admit, I just recently dropped an article at CanucksArmy about him, and so I was watching a ton of tape, and I had to throw it up on Twitter only because it was like 5 minutes of him just being a jackass. And he's a Manitoba farm boy, and he or Saskatchewan farm boy, and it shows up in
Manitoba
his Manitoba, that's Cypress. Yeah,
River.
Cypress River, thank you.
Yeah.
And, it shows up in his game, like, the guy just doesn't stop, and he's not one of those defensemen one of those players that's gonna let the game come to him. He just goes and does it himself. He goes and gets it, and he doesn't put himself out of position while doing it. So, he's not, like it's like, even if he's not gonna throw the bone-crushing hit, which he does more than not,
Um,
he's just gonna make sure that you feel it. Like, he's just gonna make his presence felt at all times, and so, it's kinda funny, like, he's 6'2". He doesn't even look 6'2", but he plays like he's 6'5". Like,
I know.
it's just it's really something, to be honest, and, like, I will admit, like, if he I've come around so much on Carson Carroll's that I'm at the point that if he was a right shot, in my eyes, he's the best defenseman in the class. He just does it all. You have all these things that you like from all like Chase Reed, offensive dynamo, great skating, Keaton Verhoff, size, good shot, and then Smith's just an all around guy. Like with Carroll's, it's like he skates well. He moves around the ice so well. He can run a power play. I was actually a little down on his offensive game, and I don't think I was alone on that. I think that was the one like detriment in his game, the one thing that kind of people were a little questioning at the starting of the year. But then he goes up and puts 73 points, and some of his goals, I don't know if you've seen his full highlight package, but some of his points are just insane. I don't know if his point totals and his offensive game is going to translate as much as we saw this year. Like I don't know if he's a top power play per se guy. But I think he's going to be like that fringe, definitely power play too, if not like the second guy on the top power play. Like I just, his shot could use some work. It's probably if I want to say the weakest out of all four of these guys, it's probably the weakest. Great vision, but he's also just not like super super dynamic with his game, like we see with the Chase Reed. But it doesn't really matter because he's just all over the ice all the time. And so like for him, I don't know. I've been super impressed with him, and I already was, but just some of the tape that I've watched on him recently, it's just like he's just dictating the game in pretty much every facet at the WHL level. We'll see if he goes to the NCAA. I haven't heard any rumbling. I've heard some rumblings, but nothing confirmed, so we'll see. But I am really interested to see how he does moving forward because yeah, he's been unreal. I really like Carson Carrolls, and at this point, even though he's a left, I'm not going to be upset if the Canucks take him as a lefty.
Yeah, I mean, you know how I feel about him.
Yep.
I would welcome that for sure. I just and you're talking about dynamicism offensively, and I understand that. Like you can see that more of that trait in Reed than Carl's, but Carl's had more points in like he had 73 points, 58 games, whereas Reed, I think he had the World Juniors and everything, but even in the
He did get
playoffs,
injured too. Chase Reed was
yeah,
was he came back from injury and he was definitely feeling it, but
but also in the playoffs, like
no, it's true.
Charles was point per game, and is that just like a product of the team he was playing on? Like Prince George is a little better than Sue, or what was that?
Prince George was definitely better. Like they're definitely a really good team. They're a high scoring team. They've got a lot, especially on the power play. Like he got a lot of power play points, and he naturally so. I think for Chase Reed, it was more like he was their driver. Like you obviously had Brady Martin, and you obviously have a lot of really good players. But I do think there was a little more environment at play. But at the same time, that's not to take away Carroll's at all because like I said, he's all over the place at all times. And for me, I just love that he's not letting the game come to him. He goes to the game, and that's for me just that's a difference maker for me. He skates well. He's a farm boy. What are you going to say? Like Canucks Nation is all about those Canadians right now, and if you want like just a Canadian like thoroughbred, Carson Carrolls is your guy. He's yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna play 2 games now, Dave.
Okay.
2 games, and it's gonna be the same as we did last week. Um, if you had to pick any of these 4 defensemen, who has the best skating? Let me guess.
I'm gonna go with Chase Reed, but it's close with Carroll's.
Yeah,
But I'm gonna go with Chase Reed.
Chase Reed shooting.
I'm gonna go with Verhoff. Verhoff
Mhm.
has one hell of a shot. Like Reed will have that snapshot, kind of like that Quinn Hughes. Like doesn't really take a lot of slap shot kind of guy. He's got a really good one timer, but like you'll see a lot of those like those deep wrist shots. But I think Verhoff has the heaviest shot out of all four by far.
There, how far passing?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm gonna go Chase Reed. I'm gonna go Chase Reed. He has the ability to kind of pull people in and find those seams. I'm gonna go Chase Reed again, but again, yeah, I'm gonna go Chase Reed.
Puck control.
Chase Reed.
Chase
Because
Reed.
that's one thing. I'll just to finish off Carson Carrolls. That is one thing again with the offense, like the puck handling. He did surprise with some really nice finesse moves, but at the same time, his handling could use a little bit of work and some polish. So I do think that is one like thing that's going to stop him from being that like overall like offensive defenseman, just a really solid two way.
Mm.
But yeah, Chase Reed definitely the best puck handling. Like he could be a forward if you wanted him to.
That'd be funny. I remember, and this is a complete side note, but I remember I think it was like NHL 14 or something. You would draft Josh Morrissey and you would put him at forward and he'd get up to like a 90,
Yeah.
90 something overall just as a forward. Don't know why that just made me think of that, but here we are. Defense.
Yes. Curls or Smits? I mean, probably Smits is definitely a thoroughbred in the back end, but yeah, I'll go Smits. But Curls is nothing to scoff at.
Uh, Physicality.
I'm gonna go Carl's. Yeah, he's just all over the place.
we didn't talk about physicality last week, but I'm going through this and realized we didn't pick Carls for anything. So I was like, what can I find that we can pick him
Just
for?
competitiveness and just overall, like, leave it on the ice factor.
Yeah.
Girls, yeah.
Hmm. So Chase Reed won this, but it was all offense. And, playing defense, it's not always all about offense.
Yeah, and for me, like, yeah, we can say who's got the better of this, better of that, but at the same time, what Chase Reed had the better of, like, I think some of the negatives come into play, and like for a guy like Carson Carroll's, like, it's just an all around game, right? Like, so
Mhm.
yeah, he might not win that one, but he's like just under it and is good at like across the board, right? So
Yeah.
like that's the argument is like I do think that's why I have Chase Reed as the highest one because I do think he is above all of them on most of them, but he's like the rest aren't far behind. So
So I know we're playing too many games here, and I apologize. I did ask you about the ceiling and the floor. Did you have time to think about it? Because if not,
I mean, not really. I'm talking about it, but if I mean, I'm talking a mile a minute here, but Chase Reed, a top defenseman, like he has
yeah.
the potential to be your number one guy. I do think the floor is probably a 4 or 5 that's still gonna like get you points on the power play as like secondary guy at the very least. I just think he's got that it factor to be in the NHL and one hell of an offensive defenseman. Like I don't know that might even be wrong. Like maybe just a top 4 defenseman. Like I do think
Mm.
he's an NHL defenseman. Keaton Bearhoff, I'm thinking a two. Like I don't know if he's a number one. I'm thinking a two, and I think he could. I think a floor is probably around four as well. Um, with Carroll's, I'm thinking a two as well for upside, and then floor. I think top 4 defenseman. I just think he's got it all. Smith's, I'm gonna go like upside with about a three, and then maybe the floor of like a five.
I
Um,
mean,
I don't know, like it's kind of hard. Like you can almost say like a couple other ones could be maybe a five, but I think like 4 to 5 is probably a safe floor. I think they're all NHL defensemen for what it's
mhm.
worth. Like I think they're all good enough to be an NHL defenseman. I just think the upside is a little higher on a few of them. So
Yeah. And so I don't think it really matters what happens if they fall to three, just as long as they pick one of these guys and have a strong conviction that that one is the best one, um, then I think they'll be doing just fine.
yeah.
All right.
And Verhoff's going to be on. He's going to be a huge factor on Team Canada that starts tomorrow for the U18s. So we'll
Mhm.
see if he just completely, this is going to come out after that first game. We'll see if he just completely shuts everything I just set up and, just dominates. So
Yeah, he's gonna make you look real bad if he goes out there and
probably
dominates. Crushes it right on. That was good conversation. That was good. I liked,
always.
you got me sold on Chase Reed a lot, and I mean, I think we had a good conversation about Bearhoff as well, and you know how I feel about Carl. So, I think it might be time to move on to some questions from the listeners. What do you think, Dave?
Yep.
Cool. Right on. This one is from Sean Bowie over on X. Question for Dave. Thanks, Sean. No problem. Um, just kidding. Given your fondness for Reed, does the Canucks' reported interest in Malhotra concern you? Related question: is there anything Malhotra could do in the OHL playoffs that would convince you he might not be a reach at third overall and could be 1C upside?
Shout out to Sean, fellow Islander, good guy, just a nice guy on Twitter. Really like him. I mean, the answer is no, it doesn't concern me. I'm not going to be, as much of a cop out of an answer it is. I'm really not concerned with who they pick here. Like, I just think no matter what, you're going to get a good player. I don't really, I like Chase Reed, but I'm also like, I don't know. I'm not too concerned about it. I think there's an argument for Malhotra. Like, do I think he's going to be? Do I think he's 1C? Like I've heard a lot of people talk about him. No, but at the same time, if your future is a middle six of Braden Coots and Caleb Malhotra, and then you have another opportunity to get a potential game breaking center into the 2027 draft, well, in 2 years you've just shored up one of your biggest organizational weaknesses. So I'm not
Mhm.
going to be upset. Like you have two really good centermen as your middle six. So I'm not upset. And can he show me anything in the OHL playoffs? Obviously, that came a couple weeks ago because he already has. And so, yeah, I think he can definitely show. He's clearly shown that he's a gamer as well. And like again, I reiterate, I don't know if he's a 1C, but he's shown me that if they're picking him at three, you're still getting one hell of a middle 6C. So if not like 2C, right? So
Yeah, and I think the difference is, with these questions is, like, the Canucks are always kinda, like, mushy middle, right? They're, like, somewhere in the low 10s to high 10s, somewhere around there, and so they're like, "Okay, well, like, this player can certainly bust," They could not work out, but now it's different because you're either getting 1, 2, or 3, and obviously those players can bust too, but their bust is still an NHL player. It just might not be, the high-end game breaker that you necessarily think, so.
yeah, as much as you don't want it for a third overall pick, but oh no, you might get Manny Malhotra. Like, oh
Oh,
no,
shoot.
like
Damn it. Right on. Good question there from Sean.
yeah,
Next one is from Instagram. It's we put it out at the very start. Um, Kenny Ewan underscore D. I'm sorry. So sorry if I
trying out here.
butchered that. Yeah, I did my best. If the Canucks get third in the draft, would you trade down to 4 or 5, get a return, and then draft?
Yeah, yeah. My only issue with it is, oh, congratulations, you finally finished last place in the draft lottery. Congratulations, here's sixth overall. Like that's the only reason why I don't like it. But at the same time, I don't know. We've just rattled off 4 defensemen that could go in that realm that I think I'd be comfortable with. So like, and then that's not even taking in consideration the forwards that we'll talk about next week. So there's enough players that I don't know if the what you're getting is dropping off so significantly that I'd be super upset. But at the same time, like I said, it's just for me, it just kind of stings a little bit. Like I said, congratulations, you're sixth overall. You know what I mean? Like it just
I made that point last week.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, there you go. Sorry, like shout out to you then. Like I don't want to steal it.
No, it's
Then
okay.
you got it in my head. Like that's
Mhm.
I agree with you. It
Yeah,
just seems
like,
a little
I don't know, but also, like, you have to think who's going to trade up for that, right? Like, who's only going to trade one spot? Like, is it really that big of a difference between those defensemen,
well, we'll
right?
see. Like, we'll see if Stenberg's still available. Like, just
Right.
because we talked about Stenberg, McKinnon, McKenna last week doesn't
Mhm.
mean they're both available. Like, I've heard some rumblings that Stenberg's finish might have, dropped him down a little bit. So maybe someone really likes him and wants to step up.
You're just getting me really excited for what's to come at the draft.
Anything can happen. Like,
I
people
know,
seem to
I'm
think
getting
it's all
stoked.
locked in, but just because even if Vancouver gets third, like, there's still a really good chance that they get a Stenberg.
Mhm.
Like it really there's nothing locked in.
Yeah. Alright, we'll go to our last one. I feel like this guy has been on every single show,
Shout out.
so far. Shout out to Karam Bassi over
Oh yeah.
on X. For pick number 3, if we fall, can we really go wrong with any of these 4? Chase Reed, Caleb Malhotra, Carson Karels, or Keaton Verhoff? Which order would you pick each of these guys in?
Okay.
Me first.
Reed. Okay, you go.
No,
Okay.
you can go.
Okay. Reed, Carroll's, Bearoff, Smiths.
Reed, Karels, Verhoff, Smits. No, it was Malhotra, not Smits.
I did. Sorry, I'm like so hyper focused on what we've talked
Yeah,
about.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Malhotra's in there. Oh, this might be controversial, but I'm gonna go Reed, Carroll's, Malhotra, Bearhoff.
Ooh, nice. I like it. Um,
I don't like the decision making. I'm nervous about it.
yeah, I think I would go. I don't know. Just because you like the player, I'll go Reed first. I'll go Carroll's 2, and then I'd probably go Verhoff and then Malhotra because, like you mentioned, there are a lot of centers coming, um, in the next few years, right? You don't have to do that now, and it just in my head, what I said earlier. I don't wanna overreact to what happened this year, you know? Malhotra was not supposed to be a top 10 pick coming into the year,
No, it's true.
and now he's shot all the way up, and I'm not taking anything away from him. He's had a fantastic year. He deserves to be in the conversation now. It's opposite for Verhoff. I don't know. I don't know. I would
Fair.
just go best
Get it.
player available, and I think the best player would be Verhoff in that situation, but definitely the first 2 as well.
I'm
Um,
fine with it. Like
yeah.
I hate to just be the middleman. Like we're in the mushy middle here, but like
Mhm.
I'm fine with all of it.
Yeah. Right. It'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it. We'll have some news about the draft lottery as well coming up. Can't share it now though. All right. This is normally where we do prospect of the week, but it's really dwindling down. We don't really have too many prospects to
Braden
choose
Coots,
from.
Braden Coots, Braden
Sure,
Coots.
it's just gonna be Braden Coots or Gabe Sherrod or whoever as a season. Well, actually, those would be the only 2 options.
Those would be the only ones.
So I think that's something we'll pick up kinda next season, but I think we get away from it now. So that takes us to Tankathon.
Bum, ba, bum.
Okay, don't get trigger happy again there, Jake. All right. So the first week, I believe it went San Jose and then Vancouver, and then last week it was Toronto, everybody's favorite, and then Winnipeg with Vancouver falling to 3. So we picked 2 and 3. Can we finally get a 1?
Drum roll.
Nope.
Oh,
Only dropping
nines?
1 spot though. So Vancouver goes from 1 to 2, and it's the Nashville Predators that move up 9 spots to pick number 1. Um,
Wow, that's a new one.
yeah.
Nashville.
I haven't even thought about that one. I don't
Yep.
really know if I don't know what they'd go. Probably just
McKenna,
McKenna.
they'd go McKenna.
Yeah,
They'd go McKenna.
yeah. So, Canucks lose out on Gavin McKenna, but as I mentioned last week, I mean, if we lose every single one of these and that means Vancouver actually wins the first overall, I'll take it. I'd be fine with that.
I guess so.
Right on. All right. Well, that will do it for episode 3 of Blackfish. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. We really appreciate it. Thank you for all the questions. Next week, we'll be covering the next few centers that are up. Um, and we touched on it a little bit at the end, but it'll be nice to go over everything. I'm sorry if my nose jets came out again.
No.
I was trying something new. I was holding the mic this time. If you're listening on the podcast, if not, I'll have a brand new mic next week, so we won't have that issue. Jacob Fraser in the back, hitting switches, making us look pretty. For Dave Hall, I'm Tyson Cole. This has been episode 3 of Blackfish.
See you guys.